So today on Best for Him Studios, we have another remarkable man, Mr. Rajneesh Singh. He's been the managing partner of Simply HR and he's worked with other successful stories like Network 18 and Gillette. He's also the author of the book called The Good Patient. So let's learn about his journey into manhood and what he thinks about men of today. So, sir, welcome to our show, and it's again a pleasure to have you here. So, sir, we've discussed a lot of things around men, and once we had a word around, you coming and being a part of this show.
Sure.
I'm sure you must have had a few thoughts about men, where they are today, what they are doing right, what are they doing wrong. Would you like to share them with our audience?
Sure. I think very good question, and I would look at men really being impacted in many ways in today's world, whether it is socially, whether it is politically, whether it is at the professional front. There is so much happening, and naturally, the male population is definitely responding in a certain way. In some areas or in some fields, you see too much of aggression coming up in male, which was never ever kind of seen or imagined. Today, if we see the way they even talk about violence, for example, or the way the violence is being shown in media is at times very hard hitting. It's too brutal. So is that what we are looking at? Is on the one side, right? So you see this very extreme thing happening on one side, but on the other side is the other very interesting thing happening, where you see the male becoming far more compassionate, a person who's becoming far more caring, who's becoming very mindful, who's becoming very sensitive. So it's a very interesting kind of a situation that we are in, where you have both these extremes actually going in different directions. And I think a lot of male population is definitely caught up somewhere in the middle. And so whether you pick up entertainment today, there's so much violence. Whether it is politics, if you really ask me, today a war has got normalized as if there is nothing big about deaths in a war. There was a time that, if people are dying, then it was used to be a big thing, but I think it's become so normal. So that is on one side of things. But on the other side also is the realization that, yes, the world needs far more happier people. And there the role of a male becomes very critical, because end of the day, it all starts from home. And if the fathers at home are not evolving, and if they are going to be continuing to be a very controlling kind of a figure in the family, that will have repercussions of their own. So I think overall, if you really ask me, huge amount of shifts happening.
So you see a lot of men, while you're at work, and you take care of so many men.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think men are not doing right at work?
I think men at work, again, interesting. Probably what you see them getting caught up is this again. When I talked about violence in my earlier statement, I think it's the competition at work which is becoming very, very aggressive. There again, I find the men, again, taking it two ways. One is that you become part of the competition, you burn, right? The other is that you completely stay out of it. And you create your own niche, you create your own space, you create your own personality or whatever it is, and you are still doing pretty much well in life. You don't have to really compete to be successful. I think that I see a lot happening again at the workplace, that things are becoming so competitive. And somewhere men have a lot to contribute to that, And so that's why the so-called politics at work is a growing phenomenon. I mean, so much. And I think by design also, if you look at it, typically the organization structures are so pyramidal in nature. And because it's pyramid, the moment you start going up, stiff competition comes in, because there are only few who will make it. And so by design you get impacted. But I think what I have seen over a period of time is that intensity of men, competing big time, and not able to take when you don't make it, right? And when when they're not able to, make it, and how do you handle that situation? How do you handle that failure is a huge thing that men are struggling with at work.
Absolutely, sir. So we did discuss that men have to face a lot of failures,
Absolutely.
and then we also discussed that there are wrong ways of taking failures, and
Absolutely.
failures can be in various spheres of life. It can be at
Absolutely.
work, it can be at family or in your personal relationships. So I want you to uncover both of them. Uncover the man and how he should be dealing with these failures. So let's discuss both the aspects. Let's first talk about the personal aspects. Like,
Sure.
why do men, take it too much to heart when it comes to heartbreaks?
Yeah, I think Heartbreak is a very interesting subject again, if you really ask me. And I think if we have to really look at again a shift that is happening globally, if you see, and one of the thing that I would really pick up in that shift is this whole thing about mental wellness, right? I think people are getting very lonelier. Um um, you being a doctor, depression is supposed to be one of the most fast growing disease, which you can't make out on the surface, but it's deep down there. I think men are largely getting to be in a very depressive state for a variety of reasons. It could be heartbreaks to start with, it could be family breaking up, it could be a death in the family, it could be not doing well on the job, there could be multiple factors. But I think because we are on the personal front, I think it's very, very clear that yes, in a situation where probably you're romancing somebody, you're seeing somebody, there's a love there in the relationship, and if things don't work out the way you wanted it to be, I think people take it to heart, especially men, and then they don't know how to take it out. I think the important thing is that how do you really handle a news of a breakup? I think that's important, that you don't take it so much deep into heart that you just collapse with it. I think important is that there is a life out there, and there's so much to do out there, and you got to look at things more from a positive side rather than looking at it very negatively and becoming very bitter with that individual. I think it just doesn't make any sense of getting into a bitterness mode. I think because two people were engaged, there was a once upon a time a love, a respect for each other. So look at and remember, I think those positive moments, positive situations that were there, and thereby I think to really continue to be in that positive mode is what it should be, rather than looking at things negatively. Um, Easier said. I think to do it is tough, but I think it's important for the men to understand that there is a life after, and you've got to be coming out of it as soon as possible. People have found second love, third love, fourth love. So there is no end to falling in love, I would say. So I think to just really take a very severe step because of one heartbreak is something that one needs to be really, really thinking about 20 times before you really decide that, okay, I'm going to probably end my life. Why would I do that?
So typically, when somebody meets with a failure in their personal life, what are some of the things that they can immediately do to come out of it faster?
I think it's important, unless you are supremely a loner, right, where you can't even talk to somebody, right, whom you have faith in, that if I divulge, if I confide, this person will always think good of me, right? So I think the very first step is to find that kind of a person. Now that person could be anybody. It could be somebody at work, it could be somebody in the family, my parents, my siblings, anybody. But I think it is very, very important. First thing is to find such a person. I think to then sit, chat, share, I think that becomes very important for that individual to really offload whatever is there deep inside. So making yourself easy, light is because you got huge amount of emotional baggage inside. You got to take it out, right? And I think the second thing is to really pursue certain hobbies or certain interests where you think that will bring some happiness to you in life, because you've been through a bad phase. So whether it means, some people start writing, some people go for a travel, you start reading a lot, so I think those are the things. interest that you can follow also as a second step after you've met somebody. And I think the third thing is very important, to quickly come back and make a U-turn in life as soon as possible. I think to be staying stuck in that point forever and not really moving forward is not at all the way forward. So that's an individual call. The third step that I'm saying, you got to think future, you got to think moving forward, and just take the life ahead from there. I think so. That's a calling as an individual I should be taking. So there is a support I look for. There are interests out there. Third thing, it's my call, and I got to take that call, and I got to tell myself, look, whatever has happened, but that doesn't mean the world has ended. There are still people out there, and I'm still around. So I think that is the way. Yeah.
Similarly, you see a lot of people coming to an office also where they feel that they are a failure. Like for men, this is very
Absolutely.
common. So we talked about it that men don't usually
Open
go
up
to someone.
Yeah.
And personally, when I have a failure and I'll have to go to someone, I would probably be thinking this person is going to make fun of me.
Fun of me.
This is one of the
Absolutely.
common things that
Oh, yes.
comes up in our workshops that we do for men. So do you think this is the way men think about others when they come and discuss about their problems? How do you see a man who comes to you with a problem, and then what do you do about it?
So I think very important point again you've raised is how men take failure. Of course, like you said, you're made of fun is a very obvious one that hits them very soon, that if you're going to go to tell about this to people in the office, everything will get impacted, right? So you don't want to even talk about it. And B, of course, is becoming a laughing matter. But I think it is important for any man to understand, accept that failure is part of the journey, right? And it has to be seen as an opportunity. And I'm emphasizing the word opportunity, that you have failed once. Like I was mentioning in Heartbreak, one heartbreak doesn't mean your life has to now get stalled and it has got to end and stuff like that. But similarly at work, I think a career should not just get stopped just because one failure has happened. I have seen so many people fail multiple times and yet have come out top, right? So I think it is about being very resilient, being very, very spirited, and again, it's about giving that message to yourself that I can overcome this. Whatever I have been told as a feedback, you're not good at this, you're not good at this, you're not good at this. I mean, that's fine. But there are 3 things that I am good at. Please tell me that also. So I think for a man, I think on the other side of the table, one is that I've been given a message of failure, for example. I think a man also, the one who is giving that message of failure to somebody, also needs to be, positioning that communication in a manner where you don't have any hidden agenda in it. I think men, for variety of reasons I have seen, they carry too many things inside, And that's where the trust factor with men is always up for a question mark, whether it is at the work front or and like I was discussing, because it's so much of competition, the trust is always at risk, so people don't collaborate. And honestly speaking, today when I go and talk about in corporates, one of the common word I'm hearing is people don't collaborate. And when I look at the profile of the people, I see only male. Then I feel, there is a serious problem with the men today. They don't want to talk to each other. They don't want to work with each other. Just because they're caught with each other so much. There's so much deep dynamics in it. So I think they need to be far more open, far more approachable. And I think people who can really socialize, mix up people, help each other, support each other. So again, going back to my first response, you got the whole extreme violence happening on the other side, huge compassion coming up. How do you kind of balance it out? That's where we are today.
So, sir, a lot of things have changed, for men in the society.
Yeah.
I would also want to know, how did your manhood shape up? What do you think about manhood, about masculinity? What are your views about it?
I think that's a very good question. Of course, I was born in a very traditional family, I would say, youngest of 4 siblings. So the way we would have handled our son in today's era, the things we would have talked to him about sex and stuff like that, we were fairly open between me and my wife. Of course, we figured our, whole adulthood and manhood and whatever you might call it, all by pure experience and along the way, right? So one definitely kept discovering that as one kept growing. Uh, One kept getting a lot of messages in school also, where you started getting identified as a person who has certain abilities to lead, for example. So I think that itself was a major awakening, that you can lead. So if I was in a cricket team, for example, I was either the captain or the vice captain. So, so I think those initial traits for any man or even women is very important to figure out in childhood, where were you in the whole scheme of things. I think that itself, from an evolution standpoint, was a huge message for me. The other thing that I mentioned to you, being the youngest sibling, did I stay a young person in the family forever? Not at all. I mean, as I kept evolving, as I kept growing, career-wise, as one kept building the career, I think it naturally the achievements at work would reflect in your personal life as well. And so naturally the acknowledgements and all that I would get today in my family from my siblings is of a very different order, right? So now those acknowledgements of your elder siblings itself is a huge confidence giver to you, that yes, you have done something very, very remarkable. I think those are messages that, like, even for my father, I think it was very important how I could make him more a friend than be my father, at a certain age. Till a point, yes, he would be my father, I would respect him and all that. Respect continued till the last day, till he was alive. But during the process of my growth, as I joined a job, kept growing, point came we would have very normal friend to friend conversation. Now there it was important for me to bring him to that level and not operate with me as a parent. So I think as a man to man discussion between my father and me, things evolved. And I think the onus was more on me than him. And I would have probably impacted it more, that these are the kind of conversation we should be having. So I think if you really ask me, the way one has grown, and now today, if there is recognition in certain field of work that one has done, you feel huge amount of satisfaction.
So, sir, if there was a message that you had to give today to men who are listening to you,
Yeah.
what would you want men to change about themselves? Just to prepare them better for the coming world.
Yeah, I wish the world was going to be a great place. I mean, that's the only wish I have. And in that, I think, look, honestly, let's look at it politically. If you really ask me, as a simple example, if I may, very few women politicians you will see. If you look at a G20 summit group picture, if you look at a big UN gathering and all, you will, out of 20 people, you will find one lady standing in corner. So naturally, it is still a very male-dominated sphere, right? Now, naturally, you would want more females to come in there. I think for the male to become more accommodative is one thing that I would definitely look forward to, whether it is workplace, whether it is politics, society, family. I think we still treat women as a second-class citizen. I strongly disagree with that. I think the male needs to come out of that whole so-called mindset. I have my sister-in-laws, I have my sister, I had a mother, so I had no reason to really see them as a second-class citizen or who need to be controlled, so to say. So I think, given the situation that I was, and I strongly believe in those values, and I believe those are these times and the coming times, those are the things the males are going to be measured upon. How did you stand up as a person of integrity, as a person who was very sensitive, as a person who took care of people. These things can make male look very weak, for example. But I think if you really ask me, these are the softer core areas which will actually strengthen them. They still think power and everything else really gets you up there. You become this whole alpha male and whatever it is. But I think on the other side, the world is expecting people to really do a different shift altogether, change the gear, and make the world a far more happier place for our generations to come. Why would you leave? Today my 20-year-old son questions me. He will question, if I do this, what is the use? We don't know how long the world is going to be there. So I think the problem is that there are uncertainties all around, right? Nobody is really confident and that this will happen. So I think given that situation, the men need to take charge of things in a very different way.
That's very well
You
said.
know,
Indeed,
and rather than taking aggression to a different level altogether, you know, being very abusive. I mean, I see today's conversation itself, the men being, I mean, look at the social media trolling that happens, the kind of words people use. I mean, I'm aghast also. I mean, I was a fan of OTT till about, say, about 10 days, 2 weeks back. Now I see every serial is too much of violence and gore. You know, it's like blood coming out, right? And the sex is on the other extreme, right? Now, how do you handle this kind of a thing that is being thrown at you at a huge pace every Friday? This is, I don't think people are going to take it for long, and people are going to push back. I mean, this has already been said that, you know, I mean, we are going to the extreme. So I think all these extreme behaviors, the whole aggression, violence and all, there is an expiry date. It will end for sure. I live on that hope. I'm a hugely optimistic guy. And eventually the guys who were good, who were solid, who thought good for the planet, why would a climate change activist like a Greta Thunberg become so popular as a teenage? Because she's questioning whom? The men largely, honestly, the men as leaders, right? So I think we have a massive role to play in turning around the way things are being done. And I think we need to be as male who are different from the other male. Now I'm actually talking about two males here, right? So I think the male who are maybe not speaking out too much, they need to speak out. They need to confront this kind of a behavior. And I think, like I said, treating women who are going to be playing a massive role in the change that we are already seeing happening across the world, I think you got to make the way for the women to come forward.
This is something that we already discussed earlier also, that men need to open up about.
Open up huge. I think they got to be talking rather than, you know, the other problem has been the men folks are definitely a far more hugely bottled species, you know. You got to open up. You got to let some fresh air come in. I think that's important.
Thank you so much, sir. I think there has been a different perspective that we've uncovered today in this series when we started on uncovering men.
Thank you.
That we need to, you know, be more expressive. We need to be more adaptive.
Absolutely.
And not stick to the traditional roles.
Getting stuck, being rigid, I don't think that there's role for all that today.
Thank you so much indeed. It was a pleasure having you here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.